I'm walking down the
I do want to say to Donnie and many of you in this room that over a very long career in this city, all of you have helped me and my colleagues tell the truth and to try to tell.
I may not look like you and you me, but
my head up.
I'm South Carolina, so I just.
What does this event mean to you, Miss Peggy Moss?
Oh, my heart.
Happy 20th anniversary.
My heart is about loving up on my sisters. Do you know what it feels like to have your sisters in the room? John.
And dare to be different and unique. I'm gonna be the best me I can be by letting His glory shine through. I am beautiful, I am blessed, but not just what you see in the flesh. I'm free from people, free from myself.
The doctor lived next door to the janitor, to the reverend, and the lawyer. We were together. Now we get so high and mighty that you create stress for your society because you don't like poor black folks either. That's a health problem. Get yourself together so I can stop being taking care of geriatric people and get back to pediatrics. I thank you, Donnie, for all you've done. Let's keep doing it for all the more.
Letting His glory shine through. Dare to be you, dare to be me, dare to be different and unique. I'm gonna be the best me I can be by letting His glory shine through. And I dare you, I dare you, I dare you to be you.
All right, all right, all right. Top of the day to you. My name's Donnie. Last name's Glover. In it to win it for the long haul, baby. Noelle Adams. It took us a lot to this point. Heavens to Betsy. How you doing, Noelle?
I am unbelievable. I am unbelievable. I am excited to be here with you. And I love your intro music because that is what my goal is, to be the best me that I can be. And hopefully when I leave here, I will have made a difference in our communities.
Where you from, Noelle?
I am from Chicago. I am
Chi-Town.
from Chi-Town, south side of the city.
Is that where you were born?
No, I was born in a small city called Ardmore, Oklahoma. And I was there the first couple of years of my life. And then my parents, you already know about the Black Wall Street. Of course, I'm very rooted in the Black Wall Street. I am Black Wall Street, and just like you are. My parents moved from Ardmore to Chicago, where my dad was from. And I grew up, spent all my formative years there, from the tender age of around 3, 4-ish, until I graduated from high school and went away to college to an HBCU, University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff. And from there, I did a little quick stint in Memphis, Tennessee, then the DC, Virginia area, and then back to Memphis, and then to Atlanta. So I did a quick stint in Florida from Atlanta and back to Atlanta because I still have work to do.
What do you do?
What do I do? So I am the founder of a socially responsible technology startup, Culpability. And our goal is to help get everyone home safe with our mobile app and other resources. And then at the same time, I am also a learning consultant. And I've spent the last almost 30 years in learning and development and organizational management. And I'm currently working with one of the major consulting companies with clients to help implement technology, large-scale system implementation. in their environment. So I am doing that and at the same time building out culpability.
And you're an activist.
I am absolutely an activist, and I am also an advocate for children and young adults with invisible disabilities because often someone can present and look heteronormative, as they like to refer to, but really all of us are are different. There really isn't a such thing as normal. And those children and those young adults are often targeted and suffer consequences when, if the world knew and people knew that they had invisible disabilities, perhaps things.
What is an invisible disability?
Oh, I'm glad you asked. So we've often heard about children being on the spectrum and having autism, right? Well, someone that has an invisible disability, they look and appear, and that's why I use air quotes when I say normal. Like someone who has a disability that's visible, you may see them in a wheelchair. You might see them needing a cane to assist them with walking. You may see that they are unique in whatever their challenges are. But someone who has an invisible disability like ODD, oppositional defiant disorder, that's a disability, and it doesn't show up with you don't get you necessarily have a parking decal because you have ODD. But all of those, and there's several different types of invisible disabilities.
Like what?
And well, I just mentioned one like ODD, and that's a huge one, and it's often overlooked. So, have you ever heard that term? Oh, that kid is just a bad kid. They're just bad. You know, they need a whooping or they need some type of redirection, and that might not be the case. That child might not be a bad child. It could be that they have ODD and ADHD. They have they're autistic and they have ODD. So all of those are things that we are often um, not privy to, and we don't know about, and we don't share knowledge about, especially within our communities. And I work with a group that focuses on creating safe spaces with children that have ODD, in particular when it comes to school and the IEP process. The children having an individual educational plan to assist them with some of those challenges that often arise. And when those challenges aren't addressed when they're, young and in their formative years, they can grow and they can show up a lot larger when they're adults.
I see. And you've been doing this for the past 30 years?
Uh, no, I haven't been focusing on that space in the past 30 years. What I've been focusing on in the past 30 years is learning and development and organizational management. So, with my experience with, you know, teaching adults in corporate America and in state governments, that's kind of what gave me some insight around the various learning styles and how that ultimately can impact children, because it was me in my own experience in growing up. uh, Both of my parents are uh, very smart, and um, I noticed I would always get that, you're smart but you can't apply yourself. And I never really understood how and why some classes I would get and do well in, but some classes I just was not, I didn't have the capacity to be able to pay attention. And it, as I got out of high school, and I tell everybody, I graduated from high school. Thank you, Lordy. You know, some people graduate magna cum laude. I graduated, thank you, Lordy. But I had the opportunity to go to college, and in getting into college, that's when I discovered that my learning style was much more different than um, teachers teach in grammar school and in high school. A lot of teachers teach to that auditory learner, more so then than now. Um, Today, in some learning spaces in schools, you will see teachers that have the gift to be able to teach to children with all types of learning styles. So anyway, in on my own path, I discovered I learned differently, and I was smart, but again, because the two weren't connecting for me when I was in grammar school and in high school, I didn't know. But as I became more of a student of learning and learning styles, that's when things started to happen for me. And that began to plant the seed on why I took that path to get into learning and development, because I wanted other people to get the exposure to things the way that I wish I would have gotten exposure as it related to learning.
What do you wish that you were exposed to?
Oh man, I wish I would have had teachers, all of the teachers that came in and out of my life. I wish that I could have been taught the way that I learned. Like, I'm a visual learner. I'm a kinesthetic learner. So a visual learner, they learn by observing. A kinesthetic learner learns by actually um, being involved in the experience. And during that time in my formative years, I was being taught by um, teachers that were more, they had that auditory style of teaching. That's someone who stands at a podium and just talks. And for someone like me, who's not an auditory learner, that can sound like the teacher on Charlie Brown. You know, when that teacher sounds like womp 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 womp. That's what that would sound like and feel like to me. Now, an auditory learner, they do extremely well. Auditory learners, they take copious notes. Their notes are nice and organized. They can go back and they can review those notes, and they do very well on test. And they're like the perfect student for that auditory learning style. But someone who is a kinesthetic learner and a visual learner, they're looking out the window. Like, and that was me in school, in high school. I would be looking out the window. My imagination would be going. Um, and again, that was being seen as someone who wasn't paying attention, when it wasn't that I wasn't paying attention. It was that I couldn't pay attention because I wasn't being taught. The Some of the auditory learners in the class, they were being taught, they were getting it, but if you didn't fit in that particular learning style, then you missed a whole lot of information, valuable information.
So, where are you now in your development?
Well, I would say in my development around, my focus now is culpability, because that's something that I've been working on this past 10 years. And now we are in a place that I would like people to know that we exist, that that tool exists, and they can download it from either their Google Play Store or the Apple Store, and they can begin to use it as a tool so they can assist them and their community to getting home safe.
So, you have some siblings. You have one sibling.
Yes, I have one sibling.
Tell me about him.
Oh, he is, man, he is my best friend. He is.
Did he have learning challenges as well?
I believe he did. I believe he did.
Is he older than you?
No,
Younger?
he's younger than me. He's younger than me. We've had a somewhat similar conversation around. Um, he feels like, and a friend of his told him that he probably did have a learning disability, and he should probably get tested. And
So
we
every place that you moved, he was with you, Memphis.
Oh no, not at all. He grew up in. He was born in Chicago, and he spent some of his formative years in Chicago. But there was a time that my mom relocated, and they moved to Texas, and he spent his high school years in the latter part of grammar school in Texas, and from there, um, I would say he did a little stint in the DC, Virginia area, and I think he did a little stint in Florida for a hot second. But for the most part, he grew up in Texas.
So you didn't grow up together. You have the same mom, the same
Yep,
dad.
yep. But I'm 7 years older than him, so he was still in grammar school and high school, and I was out the house. So
Now,
there was some.
both your parents were law enforcement.
No, no, just my dad. My dad was law enforcement. My mom was in corporate America, and that she did some time in education. She was a teacher when I was probably around first or second grade, and then after her retiring, she's gone back to doing some teaching after retiring from corporate America.
Okay. So what happened to your brother? He had an incident.
Yes, he was driving home one evening after going to work, and then he was meeting a friend, and they were hanging out, and but the friend didn't show up because traffic was bad, so he went and hung out a little bit. And anyway, he was driving home after hanging out, and
When you
he
say
had
hanging out, what do you mean? He was at the bar.
well, he went to one place he went to was a gentleman's club to watch the games, and so he did that for a couple of hours. Then he left there, and then he went to like a restaurant that has, you can go to restaurants that also do dancing and that kind of thing. So he went to a spot there,
And
and
this is in
then
Texas.
yeah, this is in Texas. And from there he left heading home, and he had an accident. He had an accident, and he didn't realize he had had an accident. And you're like, well, how can a person have an accident and not realize they have an accident? Well, let me explain. Um, when he comes through, he realizes
Yeah, this is
that,
what you're telling me is secondhand. This is something someone told you. You weren't there.
uh, well, no, I can't say it secondhand because I looked at
Were you
videotapes,
there?
and no, I wasn't there.
Or
I
you
just
saw
looked at,
tapes?
yes, 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 yes. I looked at videotapes. I looked at in-car camera videotapes. I sat in court. So this is what I'm telling you of what I've observed from me
Okay.
actually going through tapes. So he calls 911, and he tells the 911 operator that he had to have hit something. And the 911 operator is like, well, how would you know? And he says, um, he's like, hey, my car is messed up, because he's gotten out of his car, and he can see he that something isn't right. And then also when he comes through, he sees that his passenger side airbag is deployed. So she asked him, well, where is he? And he describes his location of where he is. And so she then tells them that she's going to send, you know, the emergency services, etc. And she tells him to wait on the side of the road. So probably, I don't know, however long it takes the emergency services to get there, a few minutes. You see this female police officer approach him, who is sitting on the side of the road, and he gets up, and you can hear them conversing, and he's trying to understand, kind of what's going on, and he's explaining whatever he's explaining. And you then see her uh, walk back or whatever, and her camera cuts off, right? So a few minutes later, another police car approaches, and that police car then approaches him, and they're talking to him. This other police officer and this, who's a man, and this female officer, they're talking to him, and I'm going to explain. So from the positioning of him having this accident, and when he gets out of the car, it's like an off ramp. So you know how you can, when you're getting off the expressway, right? And if the highway is kind of up top and the off ramp is going kind of downhill, when you're at the bottom of the hill, or even almost at the bottom of a hill, and it's not a steep hill, but it's a hill, and you look up, you can't see anything. It's especially in the dark of night, early morning. So the police officer is asking him a variety of different questions, this other police officer, and again, he's still not understanding what's going on, other than there must have been an accident, and he's thinking, well, maybe I fell asleep, because he didn't hear or see anything, right? So finally, the police officer, the male police officer, tells him that he's being arrested and he's being charged with I want to say vehicular homicide. And so he then begins to collapse, and the police officer tries to hold him up and walks him to the car. And he's like, he's still not grasping. He's like, what, I killed somebody, I hit somebody. He's not connecting the dots.
Did he?
He did hit somebody. He hit somebody. So fast forward to him being in the police, at the police department.
He hit somebody and he killed somebody.
Correct. And I'm going to get into that part too. Fast forward to him being
no, I'm trying to understand where we're going with this. If he broke the law, then he has to be held accountable.
Oh, I completely agree. And I'm going to get to that part.
Well, we got to get to it now, because we're going to run out of time. We're half through, and I'm still not understanding.
It's going to get connected. It's going to get connected.
Well, we're going to have a lot of time.
I get you. We're going to get there. So they get to the police department. He's in the DUI interrogation room unit. And
so he had been drinking.
Yes, he had, I think, like 3 drinks. So he's in the DIU room, and he's standing in the box, and the police officer comes in, and he's asking him questions. And he's like, okay, I'm going to read this information. Well, I'm going to read this. I want you to follow along. And in that room, they asked if you're going to do the walk on the straight line, and he declines. So you see him, and there's a video out there. Matter of fact, you should probably check it out. You see him standing in the box, and you see him um, raising his hand to ask questions because he's still not getting it. So now I'm gonna go back to what the connection with the two. This is what occurred um, about a week or so after that, him being in that accident. My my dad took him to an ear, nose, throat doctor because he has real bad allergies. And in that office, in the
I thought he
waiting,
would be locked up.
well, he was locked up that night, but he was bonded out. He had never had any history of any type of
Who bailed him out?
issues. My parents bailed him out. He was given a bond, and my parents bailed him out. So a week
So he
later,
was charged with what? Manslaughter?
yes, at the time he was charged with manslaughter. Correct. Um, so a week later, he's sitting in the ear, nose, throat doctor, and he has a seizure. And this is witnessed by the doctors, nurses, everybody in the waiting room. From there, they rush him to the hospital, etc. He ends up going to a neurologist, a leading neurologist. And that neurologist said, in his professional opinion, after he had gone through all of the testing and etc., that he felt the night that my brother had that accident, it was due to a petit mal seizure. Now, going back to at the top of the hills part of the story.
But so what does that have to do with the person whose life was taken?
That's what I'm getting to. Going back to the top
Well,
of the hill story.
32 minutes in.
And
What about that person and
this
their
is about to
family?
get the plane is about to get landed. So this is what happened with the person that lost their life. There was a police officer who had pulled over someone who he thought was doing something illegal, and the police officer had the flashing lights on his car. And where the police officer pulled over the car, like police are, when they're trained to, especially on a highway, they're trained, or any roadway where there's not enough space for them to be safely standing, on or around the road. They're trained to pull their cars out a little bit to provide some protection for them. And the police officer had parked directly behind the car that he had pulled over. So the doctor thinks what took place was those flashing lights caused my brother to have a petit mal seizure, and that's what caused his car to hit that the officer that was standing on the highway. And that's what
He killed a police officer?
he hit a police officer. He hit a police officer, and his car came to a stop when it, because the wheel was turned, and it rolled down the thoroughway on the off ramp and came to a stop. And it's when he came through, because when a person has a petit mal seizure or any seizure, that period of time just doesn't exist in their brain. They don't even realize it's happened. And he had never been diagnosed or knew he had epilepsy until that moment when he was in the ear, nose, throat doctor's office. And it is,
But what does that have to do with the officer? So he didn't just hit a person, he hit a police officer.
he hit correct. He hit the car, and he hit the officer.
And he killed the officer.
Correct.
And he's still alive?
And who's alive?
Your brother.
Yes, he's alive.
So what does this have to do with culpability?
I'll tell you what it has to do with culpability. It was my involvement in that process, in seeing how evidence was left out. It was also seeing, and I mentioned that police officer who had her camera on, but then her camera was off. Well, what we discovered post him being convicted was that police officer's camera had been edited and altered. My mom had read an article in her local paper, and she
But
took
that's
the
irrelevant, Noel.
oh, no, it's not, and I'll tell you why. She took that tape, that tape from that officer to a forensic videographer, and he, who had done work for the FBI, defense, prosecutors, etc., he was able to determine that that tape had been edited and altered. Now, had that tape not been edited and altered, then you would see a more complete story. But
What
because
is
her
it?
tape was edited and altered, the things that she said, that she alleged, that he said,
But it's
weren't able to be disproven. In
so
essence,
so
she
what?
lied.
So what is it that was left out?
Now, I couldn't tell you what was left out because it was left out. But what I do
What do
know,
you think was left out?
I think a detailed part of a conversation was left out. Things
But
that he said
isn't that
versus things that,
irrelevant?
pardon me?
Isn't that irrelevant?
Not at all. No, we can't say evidence is irrelevant. I mean, evidence is evidence is evidence. And that's why we use and have evidence, especially when it comes to cases in a court of law. So, no, we can't say something is irrelevant. And again, other evidence that is out there, unfortunately, and it happens all the time when it comes to cases and cases involving people within communities versus cases where communities do have lots of resources. Um, Evidence is important to be able to tell and show full a fuller story. So for me, that inspired me to come up with culpability because unfortunately, usually with evidence, you only have the evidence that's being shown and brought to you by one particular side. And it's not just that one side of evidence that needs to be shown. We need to see everything so you can get a more fuller picture. And that's what caused me to come up with culpability.
And what is culpability?
Culpability is that socially responsible app. So it would be like um, if there were a social media company out there that was responsible and that provided uh, citizens or users an opportunity to hit a button, reach their contacts, and their contacts can see and hear what's going on with them in real time and provide them with a GPS location so they can get here now. So help can be on the way. And it provides you an opportunity to create safer communities online and in person. And at the same time, we like to share and show resources.
One Levy has a question. Where does all this stand now?
Well, he was sentenced to almost 13 years. He ended up doing 11 and a half years because he refused to say that he was guilty of something that he didn't do. Because he wasn't drunk. He's never been a responsible person
You said he
in
had
that
three
context.
drinks.
Yeah, he had three drinks. Three drinks. And
Based on what you've told me, maybe he shouldn't be drinking. Maybe he should be on some type of stabilization medication.
no, that's not necessarily true.
What should he have been driving?
Well, a person that
Should he
doesn't
have been
have.
driving? Yes or no?
Yeah,
Help me out.
yes,
I'm a little slow.
absolutely, because someone just because they have 3 drinks or 2.5 drinks doesn't mean that they are going to be um, drunk and irresponsible. It doesn't even mean that
He
they're going to
killed,
be registering over
he
a
killed
point zero eight.
somebody.
You
He
said
killed.
what?
He killed somebody.
Right, but that's hindsight is 2020. You know, if he would have known that he had epilepsy, he wouldn't have been
But you still
driving.
suggest that it was okay for him to be driving.
I'm sorry, what was that?
You're still suggesting that it would be okay for him to be driving. Like right now, does he drive now?
Yes, yes. Just because a person, even a person with epilepsy, as long as they haven't had any seizures within a period of time, they absolutely can drive. But if you are someone who suffers from seizures on a regular basis, you can't drive, and that's something that a doctor, informs their patient on whether or not they can drive. And let me share this something with you as it relates to epilepsy. Epilepsy and seizures are triggered by a variety of different things. One thing that can trigger seizures are flashing lights. That's why they, like with video games and with certain movies, you'll see that warning message on there letting you know, hey, if you suffer from epilepsy or, other kind of medical ailments that are or can be impacted by flashing lights, you might not need to watch this movie or you might not need to play this game. Something else that can impact someone with epilepsy to have a seizure is if they are very tired. Something else that can trigger seizures is heat. Like when it's very hot outside and someone is outside in the heat for long periods of time, someone with epilepsy is more prone to have a seizure. So there are things that can cause someone who is epileptic to have seizures. But just because a person has been diagnosed with epilepsy does not mean that they cannot drive, as long as they have not had seizures for periods of time. And I'm not sure what that period of time is. You would need to, follow up with a doctor to get that information. But unfortunately, I know a whole lot about it because I've, lived this experience.
Anything you'd like to add?
Absolutely. I want people to go and check out our app on the Google Play and the Apple Store and download it, test it out, put your emergency contacts in it, and use it so we can work to help everybody get home safe. So something out of something tragic, and hopefully something wonderful continues to grow and build.
So Culpability is a community responsible company building a platform and app created to bridge the gap between law enforcement and community by eliminating brutality and senseless violence. Culpability provides citizens and law enforcement an opportunity to capture, share, and view incidents, good and bad, thus creating transparency, safety, and accountability for everyone. Culpability is so this is your tech company, and how's the company doing? Are
Well,
you
you
growing?
know what?
Are
We
you
are,
making
I'm
money?
going to say,
Expanding?
you said what?
Uh, is your company growing? Are you expanding? Are you
I,
picking up members, subscribers?
I would say yes to all of those things. We are absolutely growing and we're rolling it out in a variety of different cities and states.
Like
And
where?
uh, like my good old Atlanta, Georgia, like we've unlocked some cities in the Dallas Fort Worth area. We are working to roll out in Chicago this summer. Would love to be able to introduce it to Baltimore and New Orleans, and ultimately we want to go across the United States. But yes, those are the goals, and we like to partner with other community members and municipalities to roll it out.
How can
Because
people get in touch with you?
you can definitely hit me on the socials from Noelle Adams on Facebook, at My Culpability on Instagram. You could also download our app and you can engage me there on Culpability. But yes, you could absolutely reach me on a variety of different platforms, including Culpability.
When you say culpability, is that culpability.com?
So the website is myculpability.com. The app, it's just the word culpability, and you can type that into your app store and it will pop up, and just download it, and it's free.
You know, one thing, no, I have not heard you say one thing about the person who got killed. Is there any empathy for their family, for
Oh,
their
of
loved ones?
course, of course. That's one of the that was
I
one of
mean,
the motivations.
here in Baltimore, I mean, if you killed a police officer, you could probably expect some type of recourse. You know, I mean,
And see, let's break
no.
that.
Let me say this.
Mhm.
He's lucky to be alive. In certain places, if you take a police officer's life, either intentionally or unintentionally, just yesterday there was a clip that was released where a man with a warrant pulled out all kinds of automatic weapons, including an AR. Now, for whatever reason, and I don't know, he had a warrant. The police saw him and they proceeded to arrest him. The next thing you know, he's firing off 50, 60, 70 shots. Now, I'm not at all defending the cats in blue.
So,
But they are human beings too. And many of us have called 911 before in need of the police. And I'm just trying to get the full human
Lord, let me
sector of,
interject here. So, absolutely, was there empathy and prayers
I
for
mean,
that
because
family,
somebody either
beyond a
lost
shadow of a doubt.
somebody
Beyond a
lost their father, their
Ab-
son, their brother.
hey, hands down. I'm gonna tell you just how naive I was with the process in the very beginning,
I mean, I
because
understand your brother had his situation, but this
yeah.
has
I
impacted a
man,
whole other person's
I
life.
completely and totally agree. And in the beginning, I was hoping that uh, and wishing that our family would have been able to connect with their family, because you're talking empathy. Yeah, I understand exactly what that family experienced even before that loss,
How so?
because my dad was in law enforcement for, hell, probably 50 years total, between him being a Air Force military police, to him being a Chicago police officer, to him retiring from the DEA. So I know what it felt like and feels like to
What's his take on this? How does your dad feel about this? What does he
uh,
say these days?
well, my dad said on the stand that they got it wrong, and my brother wasn't intoxicated, and he had a seizure. And my father is one of the experts around investigation, and unfortunately he relied upon, the attorneys to do the work, and he didn't himself get involved in investigating, because he thought he was doing the right thing. um so around empathy, I had a childhood friend whose father was killed on the job as a Chicago police officer. So yeah, empathy. Yes, um, my heart ached for that family, and I had an opportunity to talk to that police officer's sister um, at the end of the trial, and I told her, you know, how much I was praying for her family. And I also told her that my brother wasn't intoxicated and he wasn't irresponsible and careless and taking or being a part of this accident that took the life of her brother. And I heard the officer's aunt say, man, just sounded like it was an accident after being in there and sitting in court. So yeah, around being empathetic, that's one of the reasons that I built culpability, because it was unfair how that prosecutor um, told this lie and painted this picture that my brother was this reckless person that took the life of this officer. This officer was
I don't
just
think he
doing
was
his job.
reckless. I don't think he was reckless. I mean, I get it that he has a sickness, he has epilepsy, but none of that will bring back that officer.
It doesn't. But what makes it worse is
But,
when a lie is told and a picture is painted that
but that's their
uh,
job.
you. But that, okay, it doesn't necessarily
That's a
mean that it's
prosecutor.
correct. No,
Prosecutor.
the prosecutor's job is to uncover the truth. That's really
No.
their job. But
Eh,
it becomes,
eh,
no, because there's a difference. Because you see some prosecutors
eh.
that do their job and they do it with a sense of integrity, and you see some that build their careers off of being political. And another example of that is
I agree.
the Central Park now the exonerated five. That prosecutor in that case was horrendous, and she did
But
not follow the truth at all. Her job
we
was to
know
make
this.
herself bigger.
We know this. This is what they do.
Right. So what I'm doing and what I've chosen to do in my life is to create a tool that can create transparency and accountability and safety for everyone with culpability.
How's it working? I mean, it's like, I mean, it's almost like you're Don Quixote, you know, on a
Well,
crusade.
um, I wouldn't say I'm Don Quixote on a crusade. What I will say is, and this comes directly from my mentor, Reverend Dr. C.T. Vivian, who is no longer with us, but the things that he shared and showed and seeds he's planted are. And it's that we have to keep going. And despite the challenges, despite uh,
Let
the
me ask you this:
obstacles,
when your brother got arrested, did they beat him up?
no, they did not beat him up. They did not beat him up. Thank goodness they did not beat him up.
Thank goodness he's still alive.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Has the officer's family forgiven him?
Uh, I couldn't tell you. I don't know
Were they
how
bitter?
he I'm sure they were. I'm sure they were. I'm sure they were. They probably experienced all of the variety of emotions that one goes through when you lose someone in an accident.
Noel Adams.
Noelle Adams, yes, that's who I
Noel
am.
Adams. Quite an interview. Unforgettable.
Well, hopefully unforgettable in a good way. Again,
Well, I certainly have some research to go and do.
absolutely. And you can check out if you want to see additional information around my brother's case. It's a website out there, and it's justice for the number four, royjr.com. And you will see some of the evidence that was not shown in court that
What wasn't shown in court? I mean, we got
uh,
5 minutes.
the
The
in
videotape, and you said the videotape was doctored.
uh Well, that videotape, I can't remember if that's on the website, but the videotape of him standing in the DUI interrogation room, That videotape is out there, and you'll be able to see just from that videotape he was not a person who you would have thought was intoxicated, just from his sound, just from his ability to control himself, meaning certain I don't know if you have or not, but have you ever been around someone that's been drunk?
Absolutely.
Yes. And there are some visible signs that let you know a person is intoxicated.
So your issue is that the prosecutor painted him as drunk when actually he was ill
He
with
had
epilepsy,
yeah, that he had a seizure.
that he had a
And
seizure.
correct, correct, correct. I
You know,
mean,
this is America. Your brother's black.
yes, true, true. Absolutely is. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we have to settle for that. And that's why we constantly work toward making America a better place. Because remember, if we just stood on those laurels, our folks would still be enslaved with that. This is America. Yeah, it's America,
Oh,
but we're trying to make
I'm not
progress.
saying it's right or wrong, and I'm not at all suggesting that I would accept. And not all blacks were slaves, but I ain't nobody's slave.
Correct. Correct. And that's why we continue.
Nor do I wish to enslave anyone. But there are some people. I mean, trafficking, for instance.
Oh, absolutely. They need to
Trafficking
be,
is the Super Bowl is the biggest trafficking event, and for me, trafficking, slavery is one and the same.
it is. It's all human trafficking. And that's really what we need to refer to it today. Those that were enslaved were trafficked
Yeah,
from the motherland. Those,
and also there were black people already here, depending
correct.
on your understanding of history.
Absolutely.
And so I got to plug my book again. I am Black Wall Street. Did you know, for instance, in Oklahoma, you had 70 to 80 black towns?
I did.
Did you know that Did you know that East Texas had over 500 black towns?
I'm not certain of the 500 number, but I did know that in East Texas there was a big population of black folk. I did.
I don't believe too much that America teaches about its history. I had to go and do my own research.
And I completely agree. Matter of fact, there's a book. Um, I'm going to text you the name of the book. My mentor had it. And in this book, and the book was published in the early 1900s. And in this book, there were black dentists, black lawyers, black teachers, black scientists, um, everything around excellence
Mhm.
is depicted in this book. And interestingly enough, one of the things that my mentor and I talked about before he died was it would be great to see images and TV shows around those types of things, because not everyone, as you said, of African descent was enslaved.
Not at all. Anybody
Yes.
that believes our history started and ended with slavery is
No, not at
totally
all.
hoodwinked by some American revisionists
Correct.
who don't even understand their own history, because truth be told, there were white slaves in America.
Correct. But they were considered and called indentured servants.
Slave is a slave.
Yeah, but there's a
Enslaved is
difference.
enslaved. Trafficked is trafficked.
Yeah, but there were some differences. It's kind of like the one in the house and the one in the field. They were all slaved, but there were some subtle differences. They were all trafficked.
This has been one interesting interview. Noelle Adams, Culpability founder.
Thank you, Donnie. Thank you. I appreciate your time and your platform, and I hope everyone chooses peace. Download the app so you and your family can work to help you and your community get home safe.
Good deal. Thank you, Noelle.
Thank you.
Good morning, world.